Hello YouTube, Stefan here, and today I have built a redstone contraption for maps for you, and for this I need a bow. Here's a bow, and this bow has special capabilities. If I shoot an arrow, you'll see that I just teleported to the arrow when it landed. This is nothing new, and you can do it by simply using 3 commands in an old-fashioned way like this. You test for an arrow in the ground, and then you teleport the player to the arrow and kill the arrow. But this is not what I'm gonna present you today, because one huge problem of this kind of contraption is that it doesn't work in multiplayer. So I'm gonna go into a little bit fancier environment, just to the nether, and I will need some help, and I've invited a friend. I've invited Scoreboard, and you can please join.
Hello guys.
This lagged again. Say hello again. Yeah, whatever. Hello Squad. He will help me demonstrate my version that also works in multiplayer. So please shoot an arrow, and we will see you teleport. And I will shoot an arrow. And now we will even shoot arrows together, like in this direction. 3, 2, 1, go! Whee! And every player always gets teleported to the arrow he or she shot. And you can do this over huge distances throughout the nether or custom maps or whatever. And all it takes is this set of command blocks back over here. And next up I will explain you in detail how it works. Okay, first of all I'd like to add that the idea of implementing some teleporting arrows came from a map that Squad here makes, and I actually joined that project, and we will use it there. And yeah, that was just the idea that it would be nice if the arrows would work in multiplayer. Well, I will go into the tutorial now, really. This is a huge fill clock here, and this means on the right side here, this command block sets these redstone blocks to stone, and this here sets all them back to a redstone block. So the order these get executed is then this command block first, then this, then this, then this one, then this one, and so on. And this activates all these command blocks every tick. And we have a few scoreboard objectives to help us out. The most important one is this one. I will just set it to the sidebar, which I called arrow ID, and this has a few members, and you see all the players in the world. Me and Squad have got a score, and they are different. And there's also a dummy, a fake player that always holds the highest score, the highest current ID. And when I now shoot an arrow, you will see shortly that there's a UUID of the arrow, and the arrow actually has a ID score too. And this score is always exactly the score of the player who shoots the arrow. So I use the scoreboard to give some score to the arrow to make it, to enable that you can find out who shot the arrow afterwards when it's stuck in the ground. Basically what I do here is I have I started at the right. I have some arrow H, some score called arrow H, and this is the score that gets here. For every player gets added 1 on the H score every tick, and every arrow gets 1 on the H score added every tick. You see, when I shoot an arrow, you see a growing number there too. And this is only so that you can see that a player or an arrow is in the world already for longer than just like 1 tick. So because I use this score arrow here to set the join score of every player with an age of 1. Imagine a run here. When you write nothing, there is always a 1. And I set him a score of join, and then I take a random player in case multiple players join at the same time and set his score of join to 0, and then I take this player of join score 0 and set his arrow ID to 0. Then I add to the current maximal ID, I add 1 by using execute on a player with a score arrow join of 0. So if a player joins, the max hash value here gets increased by 1, and then the player's ID gets increased by the current value in this max value. So I will demonstrate this now. I will set in the scoreboard display back to arrow ID, and Scoreboard, could you please leave the game now? I will now reset scoreboard players reset the arrow ID score, and I will reset the age score. And as soon as I reset the age score, the system sees me as a new player and sets my ID score to so adds 1 to the max value and then sets my ID to 1. And if score now joins, you see he gets the score 2, and the value here gets set to 2 as well. So every player will always have a unique ID, and this is important to distinguish the different players. Now on the left part, I where was I? Here I then reset the arrow join score of this player just to clear up the scoreboard, and then here I begin with the arrows. I execute on every arrow that has an age of 1. So as soon as you shoot any arrow, this arrow will execute a scoreboard player's operation score with itself as a target, and addition as an operation, and the nearest player as the other operand. So basically, when you shoot an arrow, it just adds the ID score of the player that is closest to the arrow to its own ID score. So that means that as soon as an arrow gets spawned by a player shooting it, this arrow will immediately take the ID of the closest player, which is most likely the player that shot it, and then it will set its own ID to that ID that way, and then then here I add a new objective called arrow TP, which then marks one arrow with a score age of min 1. I don't know why I put that there. This is, I don't know. Well, I take one arrow that is in the ground, so has landed, and set its arrow TP score to 1 to mark that arrow. Then I reset the age of this arrow to clean up the scoreboard. Then I subtract from every player's ID score the ID score of this arrow by using an execute command, and then apparently the player that has the same ID score as the arrow has an ID score of 0 afterwards. So I can just teleport the player with an ID of exactly 0 to the arrow with the score arrow TP. Then I add the ID of the arrow back on, and then I can reset the ID score of the arrow, kill the arrow, and remove the objective arrow TP again to clean up this objective as well, so that nothing of the arrow will remain in the scoreboard at all. I hope this slow and in-depth explanation was reasonably understandable. I basically always like comments about how well I did explaining things. Feedback about that would be really helpful, because I don't really know how much you guys know and how I should start off things, at which difficulty, and how good I'm at explaining, or which new methods I should try. So suggestions and feedback on this would be highly appreciated. Otherwise, of course, ratings of this video, like it if you like, really appreciate it. If you want more of my stuff, then subscribe. Also check out Scoreboard. I will link his channel and the trailer of the map that I just joined in the description of this video. And goodbye.